Hello, hello, everyone. We are just going to kick things off in 1 or 2 moments. Everyone is joining, so I am going to give everyone a moment to grab their lunch and get ready for this fun-filled learning opportunity. I am excited to think differently about stress. We were just chatting about it before, but all right, I see a few more people have popped on. So I will kick us off with just welcoming everyone to American Family Insurance DreamBank, where we believe in the transformative power of dreams. I'm Maddie, and I'm thrilled to have you with us today as we talk about stress. For those of you that are familiar with DreamBank, welcome back. And for those of you that this is your first time joining us, welcome. Here at American Family Insurance, we believe communities are stronger and the future is brighter when people are actively pursuing their dreams. That's why we created DreamBank, an inspirational community destination and digital experience dedicated to dreamers everywhere. From our daily event series to immersive signature programs, there's something for every dreamer. Our always free offerings are designed to help you celebrate your dream journey, overcome obstacles, and stay motivated. Also, next week we have our Dream Summit, which is our 2-day free conference that's totally dedicated to help you on your dream pursuit, kind of help you give you time to check in on your dream, make sure it's still serving you, and then also give you tools to make that next step easier in your dream pursuit. I will be putting in the chat the link to register, but we have a lot of great content wrapped around with that one, whether it's looking at your finances, motivational speakers, how you manage your time, all sorts of fun, exciting things, even a design workshop. Design thinking workshop. Whoa, I got that a little mixed up. But enough about Dream Summit. I will introduce you to today's speaker. Sarah Mayland is a women's health coach, educator, speaker who is on a mission to empower women to love themselves and their bodies at bodies so that together we can empower the next generation of women and do the same. She is the owner of Inside Out Transformation, where she furthers that mission every day through individual and group coaching, comprehensive online courses, workshops, presentations with clients and companies all over the world. All right, Sarah, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Maddie. And thank you everyone for joining me today. I am so excited to be here. So today we are going to talk about stress prevention. As busy entrepreneurs, I know what it's like to be stressed out. I am with you. I am a busy entrepreneur too. And I am sure that this is not the first presentation that you have sat through about stress management. However, today we're going to approach it a little bit differently, which is we're going to talk about stress prevention, because when I think about stress management, the question that for a long time I found myself asking, and that prompted me to create this, was why do we need to wait until we are really stressed out before we start managing it? What if it didn't have to be that way? What if we could tackle that stress before it even gets bad, so it doesn't have to get to that place? And so that's what we're going to do here today. Today, I am going to share with you just one of a few different ways that we can begin to manage stress right at the beginning before it becomes a major problem. And so today is really about the way that we think about stress. So let's dive in. I will say, if you do have any questions today while I'm going through this presentation, feel free to pop them in the chat. Maddie is going to write them down and I can address them at the end. Also, I will be asking you to contribute today as well in the chat. So please feel free to share your thoughts. So what are we going to cover today? We are going to define stress and anxiety. I think that before we talk about how to prevent stress, it's really important that we are all on the same page regarding what it is. And how is stress different from anxiety? Because we often use those terms interchangeably. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about your own experience. How can you even begin to tell when you're feeling stressed or anxious. And when you feel stressed or anxious, it's normal to have thoughts about that. And so before we can change the way that we think about stress and anxiety, we need to first understand how we think about stress and anxiety. And then we get to challenge it, which is my favorite part. And then we'll wrap up with some takeaways and, of course, a little Q&A. So, what is stress? I got this from the Cleveland Clinic. Stress is the body's response to any change that requires an adjustment or response. So, a stressor is the stimulus that triggers the stress response. Now, stressors can be positive and negative, right? We usually think about stress as something bad, but stressors can be really positive things. And this is where I would love for you to pop in the chat and let me know, what are some positive stressors that come to mind for you? And I'll give everyone a minute to answer. Kids, yeah, amen to that. A new job, yes. A crying baby, yeah. Tension or conflict, yeah. So that, I don't know if I would put tension or conflict as a positive stressor, but it certainly could be. In that it can facilitate growth, right? Buying a home, learning something new, vacation, exercise. Exercise is a good one, yes. Puppies, yes. Oh my goodness, I love this. These are all wonderful answers, everyone. Thank you so much. And now, these might be a little bit easier to think about. What are some negative stressors? The news, yes. Traffic, money, yeah. Wow, you guys are wonderful. So many: money, debt, bills, comparison, driving, war. Yeah. And you know what I love about these is that stressors, positive and kids, yes, again, right? Um, stressors, positive and negative, can also be both big and small. They can be things like war, and they can be things like traffic. And so now, one more time in the chat, I would love to know, what are some stressors that you are currently experiencing right now? TSA, yes. Lack of time, job search, work-life balance, death of your spouse. I'm so sorry, Teresa. Saving for a new house, build, overwhelmed. Yeah. Oh, Brandy, this one will serve you today for sure. Deadlines. I saw deadlines. Poor co-parenting. Starting a real estate fund, aging parents, so many things, major health issues. I'm sorry about that, Nancy. Yeah, so many. So everyone here, we're going through stuff. We're going through a lot, and that takes a toll on our body. It also takes a toll on our mind, and that's where we get to anxiety. So again, often we use stress and anxiety interchangeably. They're not quite the same, right? Stress really impacts the body. Stress is the body's response. Anxiety is the mind's response, the mind's reaction to any change or potential change that requires an adjustment or response. Anxiety, this is really important. The reason I put potential change on there is because anxiety is a future-focused emotion. We worry, we feel anxious about what might happen, about what will happen, about what is coming. And yes, we can say, well, I have deadlines now, I feel overwhelmed now, but often the story driving that is, well, what happens if I don't get this done? What happens if I don't have enough time for all of this? What happens if this person gets sick? What happens if I don't get better? What happens if my spouse never learns how to co-parent properly? Right. And so anxiety is a very future focused emotion. but it is an emotion. And this is really important. What is an emotion? All an emotion is information. It is your mind giving you information. And not only is it, not only is it an emotion, but it is biologically hardwired into us. Anxiety is something that we as human beings are designed to experience. Because back in caveman days, if we did not have anxiety on our side, we would be like, oh, look at that friendly saber-toothed tiger. He looks nice. I don't know what those fangs mean. And then we would have gotten eaten, right? Or, oh, that berry, that looks so pretty. Let me just pop it in my mouth. If we didn't have anxiety to be like, whoa, I don't know what that's going to do to me, we would have died. And so it is to our benefit to have anxiety. It is a protective emotion, and its function is to keep us alive. Now, the challenge is that in the present day, in the world in which we live now, we are very blessed in that we often do not have to deal with physical danger. And so, sorry, I read a question in the chat and it distracted me for a second. So I'm just going to steer my mind back. Generally, we do not live day in and day out in fear of physical harm. However, our brain doesn't know that. It takes a mental or a psychological threat or an emotional threat the same way that it would take a physical threat. And so it's really important to know that when you are experiencing the feeling of anxiety, all that is your brain trying to protect you. So there's nothing wrong with you because you experience this emotion. It is just part of being human. It's part of being human. So now let's talk about how stress and anxiety show up for you. First and foremost, we have physical responses, right? This is the stress response. And I would love to know what physical responses to stress can you think of? How does stress show up in your physical body? And you can put that in the chat. Eating. Oh, yes. Fatigue, headaches, tension headaches for sure. Muscle tightness. Yep. Aches and pains, sleep, hives. Wow. Yes. So many things. Ooh. Maddie, we're going to have to like copy this chat and send it to everyone because we just have a whole list of physical symptoms. Yes, nausea, inflammation, jaw pain for sure. Your heart rate, rapid breathing. Yes, wonderful. Thank you all for sharing those. I love how in tune with your bodies you are. This is amazing. Next up, we have mental responses. So the mental responses are, they can be like the thoughts that you have, the things that kind of go on psychologically. Fear, yeah, fear for sure. Anyone else want to share some mental responses? Anger, yeah. So interesting thing, anger is also a protective emotion, and it comes from the same place in the brain as anxiety. Getting defensive, struggles with decision making. Yes. Has anyone had racing thoughts? Loss of concentration for sure. Shut down. Yes, that's a very common one too. Yep, racing thoughts, giving up. I know. I'm not the only person who at one point has been so overwhelmed, right? That I'm just like, I'm not going to do anything because I don't even know where to begin. Lack of confidence. Yep, intrusive thoughts. Oh, so many, so many. Thank you all for contributing here. This is wonderful. And then finally, behavioral responses. And I did see some of these pop up, but these are the things that you do when you're anxious. So I saw eating come up in the physical responses. Eating, stress eating is definitely a really strong behavioral response and a really common one. Another one is, yep, eating, drinking, sleeping, not taking care of yourself. Toxic behaviors. Yes, snapping at your family, snapping at your kids, snapping at your spouse. Distraction. Yeah. Antisocial, withdrawing. Yep. Oh, those are excellent, excellent examples, everyone. Yes. So, last question that I have for right now, anyway, is what do stress and anxiety have in common? One is physical, one is mental, but what do they have in common? Me, yes, Laura. They're both awful. Yes. Yes, you nailed it, Kate. Like they are unpleasant. Like no one wakes up and says, "You know what? I would really love to feel stressed today." Uh, all in your head, maybe. I hesitate to say that because I think that some people can find it really invalidating, but I think literally it is in your head and that it is a brain reaction, right? Um, And yes, so thank you all so much. They can be debilitating without things like self-compassion. Yes, Chloe, they absolutely can. And I will say they can also be debilitating without a support system. They are both challenging, they are both triggers. So what's interesting is that usually stress and anxiety are things that we experience once we are triggered, but the stressors themselves are the triggers. So now let's get into the fun part. I mean, we're already having a ton of fun, but let's get into the fun with thinking about it. How do we think about anxiety? I saw some of this pop up. It's bad. It's hard. It's uncomfortable. No one wakes up in the morning saying, you know what? I would love to experience anxiety today. No, it's not fun. It's really unpleasant. It can be physically painful, right? And it certainly doesn't feel good emotionally. Yes, Darla. Um, we may also be thinking, I shouldn't feel that way. How many of you, and I'm going to do like a hypothetical show of hands because I can't actually see it, but how many of you have at some point told yourself to calm down? Like, I shouldn't be freaking out about this. Yep. Yep. Oh, we got the all caps. Amen. We know that. Um, yeah, we think I shouldn't be feeling, I should not be stressing out right now. I should calm down. I should get myself together. I should be able to handle this. A whole lot of shoulds. Um, Another thought that we may have about anxiety is I want to stop feeling it as soon as possible and by any means possible. And that is where a lot of the behaviors that we see come up, like stress eating, stress drinking, finding other ways to distract or withdraw, is that we are trying to find any way that we can to stop feeling that discomfort. And then the last thought, not the last, but a last thought is I can't handle this. How many of you have ever thought to yourself, like when you are really in the weeds of stress and anxiety and stuff is feeling really big, that you're like, this is too much. I can't do it. Yeah. Yeah. Me too. Me too. I have been there. I have been there. And now for real, the last one is I am. How many of you have said, I am stressed? I am anxious. Yes. And here a lot, right? And here's what happens is when we use that word, that phrase, I am, what we are doing is we are identifying ourselves with that emotional experience. And I want to share a quick story with you, which is I first taught this workshop as part of a 4-week series. I created a stress management course and I was kind of doing a beta test by running it as a 4-week workshop. And this was week 1. And I had a woman in there who said to me, she said, you know, Sarah, it never occurred to me that I was not my anxiety. She said, I was diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. And so every single time I feel anxiety, I just say, oh, that's my anxiety. And I assume that It's just there, and that's the way it has to be because I have an anxiety disorder. It never occurred to me that I didn't have to feel anxious. And one of the ways that we can help shift away from that is by changing this language, changing this I am language. I see that we have a raised hand, and I'm just going to ask that you pop your question in the chat or in the Q&A, unless you were saying, unless you were just saying a heck yeah to something, because I would love to answer all the questions at the end. So when we change this language, when we stop saying I am anxious, you're not anxious, you feel anxious. You are not anxiety. It's an experience that you have, but it is not who you are. No worries. And so as soon as we can shift away from that I am and identify stress and anxiety as experiences that we have, as things that we are feeling, rather than who we are, we immediately put separation between ourselves and that emotion. It doesn't devalue the emotion, but what it does is it detaches us from it in a way which automatically makes that emotion less intense, which is exactly what we want. Because when we're talking about stress prevention, what we are talking about is this second layer right here. As soon as we start thinking all of these really unconstructive thoughts about stress and anxiety, that automatically adds an additional layer of stress on top of the stress that the stressor gave us, right? So not only are we stressed about, like, let's say our kids, but then we're stressed about the fact that we're even stressed. And so when you are able to switch away from the I am and you start to shift away from some of these thoughts, what you're doing is you are automatically cutting your stress level in half because you are removing that top layer of stress, and then you can open up more bandwidth. You can open up more bandwidth to focus on the actual stressor, on resolving the stressor, because that is ultimately how you get rid of stress, is by handling the stressor. All right, so I would love for you to just take a moment and write down on your own, write down in a little notebook or something, what are some thoughts that you have about stress and anxiety? Maybe it's one of the ones on the list. Maybe it's the I am, but just take a moment and maybe write down 2 or 3 thoughts that you have about stress and anxiety. And then when you're done with that, I'm going to leave this up for a second, but when you're done with that, pop in the chat and tell me, how do those thoughts impact your stress level? Usually makes it worse. Yes. You are exactly right. And so being mindful of the time, I am going to move forward because I do want to save a couple minutes for questions at the end. So yes, stress and anxiety give you stress and anxiety. Exactly. Yep. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. So now let's challenge how we think about stress and anxiety. Consider the role of the emotion. When anxiety pops up, it is there to serve you. May not feel like it because it's really uncomfortable, but ultimately it is there. It is there to protect you. It is there to keep you safe. So consider what it's doing. It's just giving you information, and it's there to protect you. Secondly, normalize the anxiety. Remember, this is biologically hardwired into you and is a normal part of the human experience. As soon as you stop telling yourself that you shouldn't feel this, well, yeah, you should. You're going through something hard and it's perfectly justified to feel this, right? And as soon as you normalize it, you take away that idea of I shouldn't feel this. No, feeling anxiety is perfectly reasonable. The next thing is to accept that it's there. Accept that it's there, and then detach from it. Change your language. Not I am anxious. I am feeling anxious. I am feeling stress. I notice some tension in my jaw. I notice my heart is beating kind of fast right now. I notice my thoughts are kind of racing. And just be present with it. All right, and continuing with that, also prepare for discomfort. Once you start to notice these things, be like, you know what? Yeah, this is going to be uncomfortable. Anxiety is an uncomfortable time. It's an uncomfortable space to be in. And this is the big one. That's okay. It's okay to be uncomfortable. Our brains don't like it, but it's okay. You are capable of doing uncomfortable things, of being uncomfortable, and it's okay. And I would actually ask this, and you can pop this in the chat, is how can discomfort be beneficial? This is a tricky one. How can this, it makes you stronger, yeah. If you choose, gives you awareness, may do something about the situation, makes you do the hard stuff, transcend limitations and limiting beliefs. Oh, I love that. Yes. Pushes you to action. Yes. And discomfort can have that benefit if we choose that benefit, which is a really important thing. Yes, it can be a source of growth, source of growth, not gross. Discomfort is a tension point, and we decide which way we get to move in that tension. And then the last thing that we can do is affirm, right? So if we are trying to change those unhelpful thoughts, the I can't do this, this is too much, I shouldn't feel anxious, a really great way to change those thoughts is to write affirmations and practice affirmations that help with that reinforce the new thoughts. So I would love to give you a minute to create 3 affirmations that you can use to navigate the discomfort of anxiety. And I'm going to give you some examples. You can write those down with your thoughts. And this may be something that you do later, but if you were like, I shouldn't feel anxious, you might write, it's okay to feel anxious, and I know that I can get through it. If your thought was, this is too much for me, maybe you write something like, this is a lot and I can handle a lot. I'll take it one step at a time. So those would be some examples. So now moving forward, based on what you learned in this session, you are going to spend some time writing a direct challenge to each one of those unproductive thoughts. And then don't stop there. Okay, because what you can do, those are your affirmations, right? Voice record them. Voice record yourself saying them multiple times. And then when you get in your car, play them back to yourself. And that way, oh, this too shall pass. Yes. Very good. All right. So really quick to finish out, just quick review of what we covered today. Some key takeaways for you. You got some tools that you can use right now. You became aware and shared your awareness of your stress experience, right? Of how stress shows up for you physically, mentally, behaviorally. You now have affirmations and challenges to those unhelpful thoughts. We normalized stress and anxiety. You learn that these emotions, these experiences are normal and they are innate. They are part of who you are, part of the human experience, and they are protective. You learn that it's okay to feel anxious. It's not the end of the world, and you can get through it. You are also not your feelings. Use the terms I'm feeling or I'm experiencing. I'm feeling anxiety. I'm experiencing anxiety instead of I am anxious or I am stressed. And then finally, embrace discomfort. It is okay and even beneficial to feel discomfort. You do not have to end that discomfort right away. And then finally, before we move into questions, just a very quick moment to tell you how you can work with me if you desire. So I am a coach. I do a group called Love Your Body from the Inside Out, which is a year-long group coaching program for women centered around self-love and self-care. I also do a group specifically for healers, called the Heart-Centered Healer Circle, which is really about overcoming emotional blocks to growth. I do individual coaching. I do corporate wellness. I do talks and workshops like these, with corporations all over the country. And then Conquer Stress from the Inside Out is my 12-week self-guided online course, which covers stress prevention like this, stress management, and communication around stress. And so thank you for being here today. Thank you for letting me share this with you. And I welcome questions at this time.
Right. I am here looking for questions. But while I wait for some to come in, I know we're kind of right at time. So if anyone has a burning question, please feel free to ask. My notebook is absolutely full. So I really appreciate that. I always feel like Summer Maddie is really carefree and just like excited to be like living life and, having a drink with ice on the patio. And so I make a lot of commitments for future Maddie. And so now I'm just living in the stress. So I really appreciate this, and I like the reframing narrative, and that it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's like an opportunity to learn. We do have a quick question. Um, Someone asked if we could share the slides. I will connect with Sarah after this, and we will kind of see how we can share out information. And then, Sarah, you are very good at this, and I'm walking away from this webinar feeling more capable of handling my stress. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yes,
Um,
thank you so much. That was exactly what this was designed to do. And so I am glad that it did that for you.
and one question from Linda: is stress and anxiety hereditary?
Mm. So I don't think the experience of it is, but I think that's a really, really interesting question. I think that we can learn a lot about the impact of stress and anxiety based on how we see our parents handle it. But I don't necessarily think that if we have an anxious parent, for instance, or a parent who deals with a lot of anxiety, that that means that we are destined to um, feel really anxious a lot. It just could be that we, because that parent has been so much mentally in that space, that we are trained to look there. Um, we all have amygdalas, which is where the anxiety emotion lives. And so, in that way, yes, it kind of is hereditary because it is part of being human. So, I would say there definitely is some nature and nurture there.
Perfect. I really appreciate sharing the tips and tricks. I know we're at time. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I hope you were able to learn alongside of me. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. All right.
Thank
Bye.
you so much. Bye.